This short interview is to celebrate this book. New book is now. Is it ready?
Yeah.
It's on Amazon now and start selling. Congratulations to you three.
Thank you.
Today's interview is about, of course, this book. And I'm Kenji Hiranabe.
I knew from Agile long ago, yes.
Yeah, long ago. Thank you. So we have two translators here today. Maybe Uncle Bob, you don't need to introduce yourself because you're so famous around here. So could you two introduce yourselves?
Hi. My name is Shintaro Kakutani, co-translator of Korean Agile book. This is my first time translating your book. I'm a big fan of your writing for 15 years or so. This is my first one. Today is big day for me. Thank you for taking your time. And last year, I had a chance to give some keynote talk about extreme programming to Japanese Agilist community. I'm glad to have this opportunity to introduce about extreme programming as a new book in 2020 to Japanese readers. Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Thank you.
And your last book, Clean Architecture, led by many young software developers in Japan. I hope that Clean as we say. And I think clean, as the word clean, is just more than just areas for Uncle Bob's, or it's brought to you by Uncle Bob. Please share some background or story about your wording choice of clean to Japanese readers. Clean. Why you choose clean?
Ooh, well, the term clean code had been around for quite a while in the United States. People had talked about whether or not their code was clean, or they would read other people's code to see if it was clean. And so for a long time, I thought it would be a good idea for someone to write a book named Clean Code. I didn't think I was going to do it, because in order to write a book like that, you have to be very arrogant. And then I guess I got old enough that I was that arrogant, and so I wrote that book.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay, Kado-san, how about you?
Hi, nice to meet you. My name is Kado. I'm the Japanese translator, co-translator of Uncle Bob's Clean Agile. And I've been translating the Uncle Bob's the latest 3 books. I mean, the Clean Coder, Clean Architecture, and this Clean Agile. While translating these books, I gradually think that I maybe had some experience of programming with punch cards, which appears many times in Bob's book. And I'm also the translator of Kent Beck's programming book. And I think this Clean Agile, as Kakutani-san said, is very good introduction of extreme programming as well. This is not so long book, but this is very informative book. Yeah, I think the both beginners and advanced Agile practitioners can enjoy reading. Thank you for writing this book, this great book. And this is my question. I love the episode that you learn some new skills or new things very attractively. And for example, many years ago, you read the book Booch Methods before entering rational software. or for some other example, you learned TDD from Kent Beck in his home.
That's
It's
right.
very
Oh.
impressive. And this 10 or 15 years, you are learning Lisp and Clojure.
Yes.
Yeah. So this is my question. Did you learn anything new about Agile when you were writing this book? Maybe you know all about Agile, but is there something to new thing about Agile?
Something new about Agile. Um, when we were doing Agile 20 years ago, we really didn't think that integration could happen very fast. You know, we were thinking, 2 weeks,
Mhm.
maybe 3 weeks. The cycle would have to be about that long. And now, of course, we are integrating every day. The continuous integration has been the watchword for quite some time. So one of the things I have learned over the last 20 years is that whatever iteration size you think is short enough, you can make it shorter.
According to that, the commit size, batch of the commit is very tiny.
It does make the commit size tiny. There's no doubt about that. But with tools like Git, we can make very, very tiny commits and it doesn't cost us anything. We're using Subversion or CVS. Then, we didn't want to do really tiny commits because it was expensive. Now it's nothing.
So tools
thank you.
like Git is one of the reasons that made this change very fast and tiny at the same time.
Certainly one of the things that helped. And the other thing, of course, is that the Moore's Law didn't really end until about 2004 or 2005. And so computers were still getting very much faster. And the density of the machines was growing very rapidly. So from 1999 until 2000, when we were at the height of the agile thing, our machines were still relatively underpowered, as odd as that seems.
Great. I wanted to ask you about the relationship between software engineering and Agile. In the book, you name a lot of legend people like DeMarco Jordan, Konstantin or Buch, or further older, Knuth or Ken Thompson, Janice Ritchie, and so on. So do you think Agile is the true heir to software engineering, or it's a disruptor?
Oh, I think it is the true heir is an interesting way to put it. If you go back to the 50s and 60s and you watched the way those programmers were working, you would call it agile because they worked in very short cycles and they didn't know how to do it very well. So they didn't try to make big steps. They tried to take tiny little steps. And then in the 70s and all the way into the 90s, we started taking bigger and bigger and bigger steps, and we got all caught up with the waterfall model. And then it wasn't until the late 90s that we started this agile thing again, and we started doing tiny little steps. So I think agile is the true heir of the original programmers from 60 years ago.
I see. So you're not saying software engineering or not, but original engineers, original people, original tribe of making good software.
Yeah, people like DeMarco and Lister and von Neumann and all of those guys who worked in very short cycles and were very tentative about everything they did. They weren't nearly as certain as we got in the 70s. We got a little too cocksure in the 70s and the 80s. And then, took a little bit of humility to step back out of that.
So what made 70s and 80s, 90s maybe the bigger software development with a big project and a rigid process? What made it happen?
It's an interesting thing to speculate about, but I think it was the age of the programmers. In the 1950s and the 1960s, programmers were old. You didn't graduate school to learn how to be a programmer. You got recruited from inside your company, and you were in your upper 30s or 40s or 50s. And it wasn't until the 70s that you could actually graduate from college and say you were a programmer. So in the 70s, a whole flood of young people in their 20s entered the field. And those people did not understand how business worked. I was one of them. That was me. And we did not understand how business worked. We didn't understand what schedules were. And we thought we understood software because, software is just if statements and while loops. We thought we understood it. And so we lost control. And I think managers were puzzled about what to do with all these young kids. They had to give them a process. And here was the waterfall process right ready for us. And for 30 years, it dominated us until we got old enough and we looked around and said, this is a bad idea.
So old people noticed, wiser people.
I think it has something to do with that, yes. The guys who went to the meeting at Snowbird where the Agile Manifesto was signed, they were all my age. Kent Beck is a little bit younger than I am, but not much. And all those other guys, nowadays they're all in their 60s. At the time, they were all in their 40s or lower 50s. Ron Jeffries was probably in his upper 50s. So yeah, it was. We got criticized pretty badly because it was also all male. So a bunch of white men,
right.
Old men. But we actually did invite some women. They just couldn't come. I think there's a certain amount of age and wisdom and acquired knowledge that re-triggered this idea of agile.
Re-triggered. Nice word. I'm happy you brought up Ron Jeffries because I was the translator of his Pink XP book.
Oh yeah, good.
Another question for me is about architecture. I watched your discussion with Cope or a DHH sometimes said something like TDD is dead or like that.
Yeah.
So I thought the architecture is a important but subtle, difficult word for us. Do you think it emerges and you harvest it? Like, what is your thought about architecture?
Well, architecture is the shape that we give a software system for the purpose of minimizing the manpower required to develop, maintain, and deploy it. That's what architecture is, right? It's the attempt to keep the cost low, the shape we give it to keep the cost low. And it is a product of coding and design and high-level structure. That's what software architecture is. Does it emerge? Yes, it emerges from the minds of the programmers. Does it emerge during the act of coding? Yes, sometimes. Although many times programmers will sit back and go to a whiteboard and they will draw pictures and the architecture will come out of that, or at least a guess of the architecture will come out of that. And then the coding will begin and people will realize that what they drew on the board was not as good as it could have been. And so then the architecture will emerge more from the code. The act of creating an architecture is an act of creativity, it's an act of design, and it's an act of thinking. And programmers think best when they are coding.
Nicely put. Great, thanks. One more. Do you think software design and team design are similar or parallel? I thought of this because you said there are two categories of practice: technical practice and team practice. I thought one of them is technical. One is to design the software itself, and the other is the design, the team. What do you think?
It's a very interesting question, and I am not an expert on team design or team structure. I like to write code, so I like to be part of a team, not structuring a team. I have done quite a bit of consulting for programmers who then would call me back 10 years later, and they'd want me to train their employees. And they would tell me afterwards, they would say, you know, all of the principles that you taught us about designing software, they apply perfectly to designing teams. Now, I don't understand that, but they seem to understand it. So I will just pass that along to you and say, well, maybe designing software is real similar to designing teams, but I don't know that for a fact.
Do you have comments on Conway's law?
Conway's law is the law that says that the structure of the software will look like the structure of the team. And that certainly does occur. You can watch that happen. If you have 3 teams all working separately, you're going to have 3 fundamental modules. And it works every time. But it's a trap. And the reason it's a trap is that you don't want your software to look like the team that developed it. You want your software to look like the team that's going to use it. You want your software to look like the user's organization, not like the developer's organization. So one of the tricks is to make the developer's organization look like the user's organization so that Conway's law will cause the software to look like the user's organization.
How interesting. Great. So any other things you want to talk or to the Japanese audience?
Well, the burning issue on my mind for many, many years now is the issue of software professionalism. And discipline within the software community. And it seems to me that you and I, Kenji, and all of you guys and all the programmers out there are involved in an effort that is critical to our society. Our society cannot run without software anymore. 30 years ago, it could. It cannot anymore. And with every passing year, our society depends more and more and more upon software, which does everything now. I mean, there is nothing that a human being in the Western world does without software somehow being in the middle of it. You can't tell time. You can't phone somebody. You can't watch TV. You can't drive your car. You can't buy anything. You can't sell anything, right? Everything we do nowadays has software running through it. And yet, that software is not well written. It's generally pretty bad software. Most software does not have tests. Most programmers do not write tests, or if they do, they don't write enough tests. Most programmers have fallen into the trap that says some bugs are okay. Some bugs are expected. We can't possibly write a system without bugs, and that's not a good attitude. That is the wrong attitude to take. So my encouragement to the audience out there is to adopt a standard, some ethics and a standard, some disciplines to make yourself a professional, not just a programmer, but someone who's proud to be a programmer and proud every day of what they make and stands for something.
Wow, great.
You are one of my heroes for this 20 years of my professional life.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Kakutani-san, how about you? Do you have any others?
もう胸がいっぱいです。
Do you still have the professional rubber band, wristband?
It broke. It broke. I've got to get another one. My daughter has a whole bunch of them at home.
Great.
In a box, so I got to get another one.
Oh, it was a great talk. Glad to see you still energetic and talk like Uncle Bob.
I still talk like Uncle Bob.
Great. Okay, it's earlier than expected, but I think I call it a day or an interview with Uncle Bob. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay, I
Bye.
forgot. I forgot to say one thing. I want to take a screenshot picture. I'll. Okay, good. Okay, screenshot. Okay, good. Thank you very much.
All right.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.